Okay, so how many people just feel completely lost in this class? TV's not on. Is that what it is? I did. I'm trying to. Some people I'm getting familiar with, so just bear with me. I'm trying to learn everyone. Just put a name with the face with the mask on it and stuff. But so yeah, I've got everyone's attendance. So who's just completely lost in the class right now? Anybody? Anyone kind of lost? Okay, we're gonna change it up today. Okay, I'm gonna try to because I just have a feeling I'm just losing people with the powerpoints. Okay, so I think what we're gonna start doing is I'm gonna start just pulling out like the most relevant stuff, and we're gonna just start working on stuff. So what I want everyone to do is just, I know this is completely backwards what we're supposed to do. Sit next to somebody in here, and we're gonna work through problems today. I'm gonna let you all. We're gonna reapproach homework. Okay, we're gonna work on a couple of problems in homework. So try to. I know we're supposed to social distance, but I don't care. I'm concerned about you all. You're all learning accounting right now. So let's sit next to someone, pair up, and then does everyone have their books with them today, or at least enough to where we can have a book per table? And if there's like an odd number, just make a group of three. If you know, and try to social distance whatever you can. But so everyone has a copy of the book in front of them. If not, I have my copy as well. If someone needs to use a copy, someone needs a copy. Okay. So okay, to start off with, all right. So to start off with, put any answers of homework that you've worked on already away, because we're going to work on some homework problems again. Okay, so just put everything away, but like a blank piece of paper in your book. That way, you're not gonna have any answers in front of you. I'm going to walk around as you're working on it. So if you're stuck, give me a shout, and I'll stop and work individually with you all. And then when you are finished, we're going to discuss it as a whole. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit of time to start. So the first problem I want y'all to work on is exercise 2.7 on page 93. Okay. Who needs the book? Y'all need one? Y'all? Yeah, that's fine. Forget the technology. I just said exercise 2.7.
Are we going back to chapter 2?
Yeah, because I feel like there's concepts that all these chapters are really anyway. I know, we're going to do it again.
Yeah, just down 2.7.
Anyone else want to take a picture of it?
So it's basically what you got from the last chapter.
Everyone have a copy of it now?
List them all out again. And so what you're practicing is just trying to figure out what each one is, basically.
So just go through and journal. Make the journal entries for each one of those accounts. And if y'all are stuck on anything or need me to try to help guide you towards the correct entry, then just give me a shout. And we'll spend a little bit of time on it and just work through it, and then we'll work through it we'll discuss it as a whole.
Have it on the left, have it on the right. And they always want you on top to put debit and credit. Just like that. It's the same amount, it's just they want you to try to figure out which one that you're writing. The bottom one's obviously have to remember cash, because that's coming out of here. So that would be in the right because it's a credit. So that makes sense. Okay, so then you put it as, I'd say accounts payable. So it would look like, probably that, cause you have one on the left, one on the right, that's how it works. You're just basically deciding which one is the debit that you're gonna write down. Which one is the credit. 2-7. It wants you to basically, it wants you to journalize them, it wants you to go to the debit and credit, and then write down which one is the debit and which one is the credit. Like the cash is always gonna be a credit, and then accounts payable is the debit for that side. And then I always give blanks between each transaction, but you can do what you want. Make sure, it doesn't blur together when I do that, you know? I can differentiate between which one's which. Okay, next one is paid advertising expense, so before I figure out which one is which, I just always write one debit and one credit, it just simplifies it. Advertising expense. Paid it. Says expense. Expenses. Yeah, advertising expense, so that would go to left, and then the bottom you put cash, because cash is always.
Then receive is.
You're writing the dates down too, right, on the left side. I put the date first, and then on the top, I put the debit that's accounting for, and then the credit, just like that.
Yeah, like it's supposed to be.
Whatever helps you,
so you
just
want
make
to
it
make
better.
sure.
Okay, well, that changes things. So that top one is actually, they're putting it down as rent expense. But we did get the second one, according to my calculations. And under pay cash for supplies, so apparently for the supplies, cash. Supplies would be an asset. Assets, the debit, you're always adding.
That's like we're progressing.
How about that? for reference, so that way I can try to understand. Okay, purchased office equipment on account, $10,670, that's account payable. Well, where they put it as office equipment, the bottom is account payable, okay. Account payable is a liability, and liability is credit on that side, debit on that side, okay. So, let's see. Top you've got office equipment, bottom you've got account payable.
No, I'm sorry. Okay.
Let's see, next it goes to
I don't know what put in this one. Pay credit.
it says, received cash from customers on account not to exceed $730. So I'd say accounts receivable,
Hold on, so
cash.
see, okay. So
Accounts
this is right here.
receivable is an asset,
Okay.
and
Look,
assets
see,
is
which I'm not having a
debit,
problem
so
with,
I'd
I'm just
say
gonna check.
accounts
So,
receivable on the
okay.
top,
So we
cash
pay
on the
rent.
bottom, see what I mean?
Okay.
Well,
So
no,
if
okay, so
paying
cash is on
rent,
top,
so
and then accounts receivable is on the bottom.
If we're paying something, what type of element is that going to? If you pay something, say if you're paying rent person, you're paying on person, what is that going to be?
Trying to understand.
Yeah, I was saying which one.
It'd be an expense, right?
It's debit, you're getting money.
So, deal with
Credit.
creditor, you just bring expense. Right?
So the debit, the cash.
Yeah, okay, so right
City
here.
paid rent for the month, so so instead of
No,
paying
his
rent.
credit is on it, right?
It's an expense, right?
They
So
put
you're
accounts
right, you pay
receivable.
rent, that's your debit, but your credit's right too, because you paid it, right?
So, okay,
Cash,
so,
they put it
alright, look.
So does that make, does that go ahead?
So our rent expense is a, as
So
a,
receive, okay.
it's a liability, so.
No, you're thinking of balance sheet accounts, or elements, right? Because our balance sheet is your assets. and liabilities. Remember, we have a whole other statement, our income statement, that has revenues and expenses on it.
Okay.
So it's an expense.
Okay.
So pretty much what we're doing when we say paid rent for the month, so what this journal entry is gonna do, that rent expense, that debit is going to be building your expense account on your income statement. Okay? That credit of cash is going to reduce your asset of cash on the balance sheet. Okay? Just think about the incurred expense, right, expense or debits, so we're increasing expense on the income statement.
First and left.
Cash is an asset, debits increase assets, so if we're crediting, it's going down, so that amount's going down the balance sheet, okay, does that make sense?
I just don't get, well, see, I just don't understand, like one of the names to write under each one. So
That's why I'm having us do it all over. Is there another one that's sticking out particularly right now? Or?
Oh, I think I get it. It's just like picking up.
The names, yes, the names.
The names, okay, which one are y'all struggling on?
They paid them already. Cash, yep, that's what they did, payable on the top.
Creditor on account.
Would that be an account payable?
Right, so if we're paying the creditor on account, right, then how, so we know an account payable is a liability. So if we're paying
Debit is
that,
on the left.
how do we reduce the liability? You give ourselves credit, right?
But it has.
You give them the account.
Debit, the account's payable, right? So that's your debit, because we wanna reduce it, right? So there's the key right there, paid creditors on account, okay, so we have an account with a creditor, so we know that's gonna give us a key, okay, so if we're paying a creditor on the account, then we have an account payable with us, so we have to reduce it, so we build the account payable. But if we pay them, we know what's the credit.
Yeah.
Cash, right, because it's reducing our asset, it's money going out the door. Makes sense? Anyone else stuck on that particular item?
And so whenever you receive, with cash, which one, like 110, so when you receive it, so that'd be accounts receivable, right?
So receive cash from customers on the account, right? So this is just the complete opposite. Now they owe us, right? So pay credit, oh, I'm sorry, receive cash from customers on account. So what's that mean? What's our debit gonna do? We're receiving cash. So it's kind of, the receiving cash is the debit side of it, right? Because we're receiving cash as money coming in, it's massive.
Because that accounts receivable, and then
So what's the credit?
the credit would be cash, right?
Remember we received cash. So if we're receiving cash, we want to increase cash. So remember cash, debit's increasing cash. So there's our debit. What's the credit now? If we received money from someone that owed us, so we had an account receivable with them, right? So if credit AR can reduce the amount that shows up. So when we receive the money, receive cash, there's debit cash from customers on account. So that means we have record that they owe this money on our account. So if they're paying us, we're gonna debit the cash because we're getting the money.
Okay, so I write down cash right here, and then I write down accounts receivable, right?
Right, so we'll debit cash, that'll be your debit, and then you credit the account receivable. Because in essence, they pay us money, so we receive cash, it's increasing debit. But at the same time, AR is an asset, right? We need to reduce it because now they pay us for that, so we credit that. Does that make sense?
So, yeah, so, then that means that it'd be,
Pay telephone bill, is the utility expense in parentheses for the month, $240. That's gonna be expense. Obviously, if we put it in
So you
parentheses.
debit cash, credit AR. Yep. That's it. Does it make sense? So it's just complete opposites. So
yeah, it's just a little, it's like.
It's a lot, I know it's a lot.
Okay.
But then see how the terminology, like you just have to really think, like, okay, received cash from receiving it. Obviously, that's telling me that's my debt.
So cash is your receipt, okay, so
Because if you're
cash
receiving-
receipt, that's not, I'm getting stuck, like either, should I put cash first, or like cash?
Whatever works.
receivable?
Whichever one you pops in your head first. Because if you figure out one side of it, then you only have to figure the opposite side. So if you know one for sure, cash is an easy one to remember. You paid it, you know it's credited. If you debit it, you know it's going up. So really, whichever side sticks out to you first on the equation or on the entry, do the debit or credit first. It does not matter. Whichever one pops out to you first. So that, I'm gonna tell everyone else that too. When you're making these journal entries, like if you're kind of confused and you know what the debit or the credit is, but not the other one, go ahead and just set up your credit. If you know what the credit is before the debit, go ahead and record that and then think about what the debit would have to be. And vice versa. If you know the debit, go ahead and do that. Don't sit down and wait for the whole thing. Go ahead and write down what you know. Because sometimes the debit or credit is obvious, and sometimes you really have to kind of think of what it is. Okay. Anyone else struggling on it? Is a certain part, or everyone doing all right? Y'all want to talk about it now? Or y'all want
I got
another
a
minute?
couple more, but I think we're good so far.
You have one more?
Yeah.
Well, I'll give y'all another minute or two if you want, and then we'll run through it and talk. Is everyone good? Everyone else have a question?
So fees earned and billed customers per month, so I'd say that's accounts receivable, what you're getting money. Yeah, put that on top, and fees earned on the bottom.
Thirty?
Yeah, between, yeah,
I was thinking. Yeah.
And we got two more for October 31st, we put it.
Right now, what fees are? So it's going to look more just debits, credits. Listed, that's good.
Okay, so then for the second
Right,
October
that's the
31st.
journal. The journal.
Electricity bill, utility expense, so it looks like. Yeah, for the month, but they want to differentiate between, when I put it down, I put it, step utility, I put it as electricity expense, and then shopping is and then cash on the bottom.
It's just ballsy, man. And they make.
Right now, they're just doing the accounts up here. Right now, that's the next thing. Okay, everyone want to talk about it now? Everyone good? Let's try to talk about it so we can try to cover one more topic.
So like his name, short, so that's his. withdrawal of cash for those, so withdrawing cash.
Okay, so for the first one, October 1, paid rent for the month of $4,800. What's the entry for that? Do what?
Rent. I put rent expense.
Will you blow it up?
Okay. Okay, so the first one. Okay, so what's the debit going to be? I think rent expense, right? So we're going to debit rent expense because it says paid rent for the month of $4,800. So if we're paying rent for the month for $4,800, we're incurring an expense for rent, right? So we know expenses are debits, right? So we're going to debit rent expense, and if we paid the rent. So what's the credit side of that? We credit cash, right? Because it's money going out the door, and we know cash is a debit balance, right? It increases your asset. So to decrease your asset, we have to credit it. So debit, incur our expense, right? So so the debit is do y'all need me to type this out, or are y'all cool with me just talking right now?
You can just talk.
Just talk, is that fine?
Yes.
Okay, so on the left, so the debit is rent expense, credit cash, right? So the debit to rent expense is an income statement account. You're increasing your expenses on your income statement. The credit to cash is reducing your asset of cash on the balance sheet. Everyone understand that? Okay, next, for paid advertising expense of $2,500. So what's the entry for that? Paid advertising expense. Right. Right, so it's the same thing we just did, right? It's just a different type of expense, right? So now we're just labeling what the relative expense is and then crediting the cash, right? Remember, the expense, the debit, is increasing your line item of expense on your income statement. The credit, the cash, is reducing the asset of cash on the balance sheet. Make sense to everybody? Okay, and just for heads up, I'm working on getting this Elmo working, so I'll be able to just put stuff under here and talk about it. I just don't have that capability yet. I'm hoping to get that fixed today, so just bear with me here, okay? So what about paid cash for supplies? What's that entry? Do what? Would the supplies is debit?
Yes.
Right, so because we're receiving supplies, right? What's the credit?
Cash.
Right, because we're paying cash, right? Makes sense to everybody? So the debit of supplies is a balance sheet account. It's raising that asset up. The credit to cash is also a balance sheet account, but it's reducing your cash account. Makes sense? Okay, what about purchased office equipment on account?
Office equipment would be the debit.
Right, so there's your debit because we're receiving an asset of office equipment. So we want to increase that line item on the balance sheet. Okay, and what's the credit in this case? Right, why is it an accounts payable? Right, we still owe them. And accounts payable is what? It's a liability. Credits increase liabilities, right? So now we've debited the equipment. Once again, balance sheet account, our equipment is going up. That's an asset. Our liabilities are also increasing because the accounts payable is a liability. Makes sense to everybody? Okay, let's say received cash from customers on account. What's that entry? Right, debit's cash, right? Because we're receiving money's coming in, so we have to increase that asset. And what's the next one? What's the credit? Right, because they owed us the money, so we were holding that receivable as a debit. So to reduce that accounts receivable, we have to credit it, right? Makes sense to everybody? Okay, paid creditors on account. What's that one? Paid creditors on account.
Accounts payable would be the debit, wouldn't it?
Right. Why is accounts payable the debit? Remember, accounts payable is a liability, right? Liabilities, credits increase liabilities. So if we're paying a customer on account, we want to reduce our liability, right? We want to give ourselves credit for paying them. So we need to debit that liability to reduce the accounts payable. So what's the credit to that? Cash, right? Because we paid it. So cash is going out the building. So we have to reduce cash, right? The asset of cash. So that's why we're crediting it. And we also have to reduce the liability that we had as a payable. So we debit the accounts payable. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, paid cash for miscellaneous expense. What's that one?
Miscellaneous expense.
Is our debit, right? And then we know cash is going to be our credit. Okay, paid telephone bill, utility expense for the month. What's that one?
Utility expenses.
Right. And then cash is our credit, right? Okay, so we getting this? Is this making sense a little bit better after running through it this way? A little bit better? Okay, we have about 20 minutes left. Let's go ahead, and now what I want everyone to work on is exercise 216, the trial balance. Okay? And I'll go ahead and let people take pictures of this and stuff. You got it, sorry. I was just asking.
I put a header at the top, but you don't have to. But a degree, furniture, but just the trial balance. And then I put December 31st, it's a July 1st, it's July 6th. He said it's basically, you could just pick whatever, you can pick 2006, 2016, you just put that in to show you just whatever you want.
This is what you're just doing. So this is what you're doing.
So I took those counts, and then I separated it, I put
You correct
debit,
accounts receivable.
and then credit.
It's okay, but, so,
Each amount, each one.
Hold on just a second.
I remember you telling me this, like, but you said that you just put it in order from the most liquidest. So,
Say it again, I'm sorry.
how are you telling me about this one? So, like, you said just put it in order from the most liquidest.
Right, so the order of liquidity is the way that
Okay, but does it matter on the assets? Like which one goes first?
That's what I'm saying. Don't even worry about that now. Just worry about your debits and credits being right now. Okay. I will say I'm gonna give y'all a heads up on this one. Start because the trial balance. What we're doing is we're starting. Pretty much all we're doing is all those accounts that are listed right there. They're either a debit or a credit, right? Because they're either going to be an asset or a liability or equity, expense, something of that sort, right? So start with balance sheet accounts first. What's on the balance sheet? What elements are measured on a balance sheet? And equities, right? Assets equals liabilities plus equities. So start with the exact order of that format, okay? So start with assets first, liabilities next, equities, and then add in your income statement accounts, meaning your revenues and expenses, okay? So pretty much what this is doing is testing to see if you can identify what type of element it is, and then whether it's a debit or a credit.
They're asking you to find out what you what cash is. So I left it blank because what you're gonna do at the end, you're gonna add it all up and balance it out and subtract it to figure out what it's cash value. And then, they want you to do the most liquid, what did you say it meant when you said most liquid?
Don't even worry about liquidity right now. We'll cover that later. Just right now, all I'm concerned with is that you get your debits and credits right, okay? But try to keep your elements together. Like try to list assets first, then your liabilities, then equities, then revenues and expenses. Don't worry about the order beyond that right now.
assets, liability. Yeah, I gotta say, I'm putting it on my numbers. Yeah, so I'm just gonna write it out to the side, because supplies is an asset, prepaid insurance is an asset, land is an asset, accounts payable is an asset. Well, put that, yeah. Butter and bread.
And then we'll see what they get us and everything.
Well,
For this one, sure.
but they haven't given it to us yet. Okay, notes payable, that liability or that expense? Liability is payable.
No, I'm saying like,
Capital would be would be equity. And then the drawing would be, you're taking money out, so that would be, that's either liability or that's an expense. You're taking money out. Is the drawing a liability or an expense?
Is the drawing a liability or an expense? It's not an expense, it's a part of equity,
Okay.
okay?
Fees earned, revenue. And all these little ones that say expense are expenses. I mean, I had them in pretty much the same, so. Yeah, I just put them in that section, because they're all together, I have assets, liabilities, and we have a
well, okay, well, like, because
Oh, really? Did you like stay up all night?
How do you do that?
So it would just be accounts payable.
There's fees and. Which fees are
Really excited, I think that's part of it, my partner said to put it, asses for new jobs, like, I haven't seen him in like 2 months when school started, and he got a new job, and so we're going to, like I said,
expenses
this
are
weekend, Thursday, hang out for a weekend. Cause usually I see him every week, but I just never see it, and so this is, I'm starting everything. It's better than online, because you get it together.
yeah. I think we listen.
I hope not really, like, I try to go to sleep, people like, they try, yeah, it didn't work. So they say there's all those things you can do, like you can turn off your phone like an hour before you go to bed, just stuff like that, like drink some sleep tea, you know, I'm just like, I'm not really into all that, you know. I need to give me some like chamomile tea, cause they say that stuff makes you really sleepy. I tried it once, it didn't do what they said it would do for me, I tried it and like I still didn't go to sleep. Sleep, you're gonna be tired. I'm like, you know I'm trying, right? It's not like I'm just sitting up and like watching The Office for like 2 hours. Although that is like my favorite show. I've seen it through at least like 10 times. Have you seen it? I've started it. Oh, it's such a good show. I like that. Have you seen Parks and Rec? No. That's a good one too. Although I do like The Office better. I like Superstore. Have you watched any of that? No. Yeah, me too. Like, I got friends who are like, have you been catching up on blah blah blah? I'm like, no, I don't have time anymore.
Right. Because fees aren't set, right?
Even on the weekend, it's like I have a part-time job.
Any other things you're on?
Work that I do by Sunday, but I haven't caught up on it.
So the thing about the test, whatever, so like.
I say, I get tempted because I'm like, I say, I'm gonna do my stuff, and then I get to the weekend, and it's like, hey, I don't have to go anywhere, I can sleep in, and I don't have to change out of my PJs and watch TV all day.
The exams, I think I'm gonna do them online, honestly.
I'm so
And,
tired from the day before.
most likely I'm thinking, like these, like homework's gonna be the hardest thing. You might see like one word answer, but for most person, multiple choice, but it will still cover all this concept. You know what I mean? I'm thinking it's probably gonna be online, because it'd just be easier for people to just do it, it'd be proper training. But,
Yes, that's what I'm saying. People look at, that's what I was wondering.
Sometimes I do actually.
People rather than, I think in class, some people don't, you know, because we do proper and stuff, like it's like a lot of, issues and stuff they say, so that's
I
why.
mean, we can take it in class. I mean, I'll do whatever everyone wants to prefer, I mean, or whatever they
So
prefer,
basically what it wants
it's
you to
really
do
just,
with all these.
it's up to you all. I
decide whether
mean, in a
they're-
way,
I would just definitely rather have it in class.
In class.
Yeah, that's just me. I don't know.
yeah, I mean, I'm indifferent, I don't really care, we can do it either way as far as I'm concerned, because there's an online section as well, so we'll figure that out.
They put it in left for the accounts receivable, asset is a debit for you get money, so.
All right, everyone feel all right on that one? Y'all want to talk about it real quick?
Could you give us like 2 more minutes to work on it?
Yeah, sorry.
What happens when you get to the end is like after you have them all in their columns, then you add them up. And you see that this side has more than that side because you have them counted for cash in. So what you have to do is you subtract that and that, and that'll give you the value of cash. Once that's balanced out, then you write it up the same. It's like, this reminds me of like algebra when you have like x plus 1 equals 5 or something, and you subtract between x and 4, you know.
And when we count up the cash,
Just all math.
we put it there and it
I took
balances
trade
now.
last semester, 2 semesters ago, I thought. Statistics now. And I transferred from online to in class, and I'm just like, I can't.
right, everyone. Okay.
We can,
Yeah.
okay, yes, I know, see, okay, well, these, okay, right here, they're landing, these earned rate will be the debt, or what?
Remember, you just asked me what fees are.
I know it's a credit, but I'm saying, okay.
He has the F on his phone.
Fees are billed to customers, so you know, fees are, it's always gonna be a credit, right? Because it's a credit. So there's your credit, right?
Okay, so it didn't go up top, but it didn't be over
Although
there, right?
Joe, he said if I'm watching the
Fees earned is your credit, so the credits are a little notch in the bottom, because your credits over here, so the debit's over here, and then the credits are
I
little,
can't get it
little
right, I
notch
really
in the
can't.
because it's not, so you're just pretty much keeping your debit on the debit side and the credit. It's not just there. So fees earned your revenue, right? Okay. But it says here, fees earned and billed to customers. So the customers didn't pay us, right? So we're not receiving cash.
So the accounts receivable.
Right.
Okay.
Makes sense? Okay. All right, let's talk about this. Everyone cool to talk about it real quick? All right, I don't know why I just didn't do this last time, but I can show it to you up here. So we'll just talk about it real quick. It'll be a lot easier if it ever comes on. So everyone see that all right?
Did you blow it up a little bit?
I might be able to. Let me see here.
What?
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is an unadjusted trial balance, okay? So pretty much this is what we do at the end of a closing period. At the end of a closing a period out, meaning by the end of the month or the end of the year, okay? So this is what we're going to do. We're going to have all of our relevant accounts like we have listed in the book there. It says that the following accounts are for the company, okay? Those accounts are made up from the journal entries that we just did prior to this example, okay? So all the journal entries a company makes are going to build up what those amounts are, those line items that you all are just building the trial balance for, okay? So that's where those numbers came from to build the trial balance, is from journal entries made throughout a period, okay? So first thing we want to do is obviously we just want to list all the relevant accounts that are listed there, okay? They're either going to be assets, liabilities, equities, revenues, or expenses. That's the order we want to list them. We want to start with the balance sheet accounts. We said that, so start with assets, right? We really want to list them in the order of liquidity, okay? That's the order in which they're listed here. For now, I'm not really concerned with that. I'm just concerned whether you know what the element is and whether it's a debit or a credit, okay? But we're going to assume that we're going to say it's an order of liquidity, okay? So cash, we found that, but it's 33,320, okay? And we'll explain how we found it when we run through it real quick. Accounts receivable is the next one. Accounts receivable is what? Asset. So it's a debit balance, right? Same thing, supplies, prepaid, land, all these are assets, right? They're listed in the order of liquidity, so that's why we're putting them on the debit side. Makes sense to everybody? Next, our liabilities is what we're accounting for next. We know liabilities are credit balances. So our liabilities in this case is accounts payable, unearned rent, and notes payable. That's why they're all in the credit right here, right? Next, our equity, the capital, that's what the owner put in, so that's credited. The drawing, that's a debit because it's money coming out, so that we have to account for it as a drawing hitting against it. Then next to there's your balance sheet accounts, right? Does that make sense to everybody? Because remember, assets are debits, liabilities and equities are credits. Okay, next, income statement accounts, right? What accounts are on income, or what elements are on income statement? Your revenues and expenses, right? So we know revenues are credit balances, right? So the fees earned, there's your credit. And then we have the expenses, and we know expenses are debit balance, right? So we just list the expenses. It's that simple. You just have to know your debits and credits. And then your balance, you should balance out your debits and credits. That's what we're checking for. In this case, it did not because cash was unknown. So obviously, the difference between the debits and the credits in this case is your plug for cash. So that's a plug number. Makes sense? Anyone having trouble with the unadjusted trial balance right now? Makes sense to everybody. Did it help just working through stuff this way instead of going through PowerPoints? So moving forward, we're going to cover a topic and then work on problem and then discuss it. Cover a topic, work on problem, and discuss it instead of me just boring you with the PowerPoints. Does that sound better?
Yes.
What are you posting the homework?
The homework.
for chapter 3.
Yeah, I'll be posting that. It'll be a really short. It'll just be one problem. Okay. So it'll be a shorter one. And the quiz will be available as well. And I'll make sure you have plenty of time. It won't be due like Monday or anything. And speaking of Mondays, obviously a holiday. We do not have class on Monday. So next. The quiz. I'm sorry. The quiz is up. Sorry, some people have already attempted it. So the quiz is up. I'm sorry. I get my classes mixed up. Quiz is up. Was the quiz hard?
Yeah, it's already up.
The quiz is up. I forgot that it's another class, but yeah, but homework will be posted. It'll just be one comprehensive problem. So be on the lookout for that, and I'll make sure you have plenty of time to complete it. Thank you all. Y'all have a good holiday weekend too.